Hello. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this training. This video will discuss medication options for opioid use disorder treatment, also known as MOUD, in Colorado County jails. Providing these medications can help keep your jail in compliance with Colorado House Bill 22-1326, the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Act. This training is extensively referenced, with citations provided throughout. Sources are indicated by numbers which correspond to a list of references provided at the end of the video. County jails have a significant number of individuals with opioid use disorder, many of whom are at risk of severe withdrawal symptoms. And House Bill 22-1326 now mandates that all 3 Food and Drug Administration approved medications for opioid use disorder be made available to people who are incarcerated. The bill also states that individuals must be provided the option to select the medication that is most appropriate for their condition, and it gives them the right to change which medication they want at any time. The aim is to guarantee that people who are incarcerated receive the same level of health care and medical services as individuals living in the general public, essentially prohibiting any disparity in the quality of care based on their legal status. Additionally, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, jails are required to protect individuals with disabilities, and some people with opioid use disorder are considered disabled. Failure to provide appropriate care can result not only in tragic outcomes, but also in legal action against the jail, its staff, and the county government. We understand that adherence to these requirements is not easy for jails. The guidebook that accompanies this video, Complying with Colorado House Bill 22-1326, is a good resource. The bottom line is that knowing the latest science will give you direction on how to comply with the law and address the opioid overdose epidemic in your jail. Let's start with a little background. A disability is defined as something that can substantially limit a major life activity, like the ability to take care of yourself, think, learn, concentrate, communicate, or work. And as we mentioned in the introduction, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, diagnosed opioid use disorder is considered a disability. The ADA requires that individuals with OUD and treatment not be discriminated against by being denied necessary medication, and correctional facilities have an obligation to provide appropriate care, which includes preventing withdrawal. In other words, the ADA protects people in recovery from opioid use disorder who are not engaging in illegal drug use. That protection extends to a variety of settings, including prisons and jails. Okay, so you've heard the term opioid use disorder, or OUD, but what is it really? The American Society of Addiction Medicine defines it as a complex chronic disease that affects the brain structure and function, leading to compulsive behavior centered around obtaining and using the substance, often with harmful consequences. Narcotics Anonymous defines it even more starkly. OUD is a progressive disease characterized by compulsive drug use despite harmful consequences. It's important to remember that what we are dealing with here is a medical condition, not a moral failing. The brain is actually hijacked. These individuals did not start out this way, but exposure to the drugs did change them. In people with an opioid use disorder, the brain chemistry is changed by the substance to a point where they have little to no ability to control their drug-seeking behaviors when experiencing cravings and withdrawal symptoms. So given this information, why should you, as jail leadership, care about opioid use disorder? There are several good reasons. One is because it will help you stay in compliance. Another is that it will help you avoid liability. A person can die directly or indirectly from withdrawal. And as we noted in the introduction, if this happens in custody, it could put the county government, jail, and staff at risk from lawsuits. Withdrawal from opioid misuse presents a difficult challenge. It places a huge responsibility on jail personnel who need to keep people who are incarcerated safe. If there is such a thing as good news in this context, you can find it in the fact that there are safe, effective, medication-based treatments for OUD. We've learned that withdrawal can be extremely dangerous and risky for all parties. That's one reason you should support providing medications to people who are detained with OUD instead of isolating them and expecting them to quit cold turkey. And don't forget, House Bill 22-1326 requires jails and prisons in the state of Colorado to provide MOUD to incarcerated persons with opioid use disorder. Simply put, the use of medications for OUD is not only a statutory requirement, it is good for overall rehabilitation and can improve the jail environment. Medications for opioid use disorder, or MOUD, provide significant benefits, including reduced opioid use, lower risk of overdose, reduced criminal activity, improved physical health, less suffering, less potential liability, and better health outcomes. That's a winning proposition. Okay, we've talked about why you should care about it and why you should support providing medication to detainees with OUD. Now let's take a look at the 3 medications that are currently available and approved by the Food and Drug Administration for treating OUD: buprenorphine, methadone, and naltrexone. Buprenorphine, methadone, and naltrexone each reduce the risk of return to use and relieve the symptoms and psychological cravings that occur during opioid withdrawal and recovery. Buprenorphine and methadone reduce withdrawal symptoms. Methadone can be used to manage severe pain, and naltrexone blocks effects of opioids. You need to know that before starting naltrexone, the individual must be completely detoxed from opioids. This generally requires a 7 to 10 day opioid-free period, depending on the type of opioid used. If the person still has opioids in their system, naltrexone can trigger severe withdrawal symptoms. Overall, the goal of these medications is to normalize brain chemistry, block the euphoric effects of opioids, relieve physiological cravings, and normalize body functions without the negative and euphoric effects of opioids. Now that you have an idea of what medications can achieve, let's take a look at how therapy can supplement and enhance the results. Evidence-based behavioral therapy, or EBT, for example, cognitive, behavioral, and motivational interviewing, has been subjected to large, well-designed studies that prove it leads to positive outcomes. And while a county jail is not designed to be a therapeutic environment, the fact is there are nearly 10 times as many people with serious mental illness in prisons and jails than in state psychiatric hospitals. So, when Colorado Sheriff Sean Nobley said,
"The American Sheriff is the #1 provider of mental health services in America,"
he had it right. Even if providing mental health services is not your primary role, you may still find yourself working with individuals who have mental health challenges within the jail setting. That's why it's important to know that studies have shown that evidence-based therapy, especially when combined with MOUD, can really make a difference and result in better outcomes than either medication or behavioral therapies alone. We're talking about a whole host of positive outcomes, like reduced return to use rates, better psychological behavioral health, decreased criminal activity, continued engagement in treatment, reduced illicit opioid use, reduced return to incarceration, and fewer overdose deaths. So, even though evidence-based therapy is not required by Colorado House Bill 22-1326, if it's possible to provide it in your jail, you should consider doing it. Treating OUD within jails can decrease incidents of violence, aggression, and rule violations, fostering a more stable and rehabilitative environment by complying with ADA requirements. In Colorado House Bill 22-1326, jails can mitigate the risk of death and litigation while playing a role in promoting successful reintegration into society. In summary, we have developed a guidebook specifically for Colorado County jails to serve as a valuable resource in implementing medications for opioid use disorder, or MOUD, in compliance with Colorado House Bill 22-1326. This manual offers essential guidance on addressing the opioid epidemic within the jail system, and also is providing practical strategies to ensure regulatory compliance for MOUD administration. This content was created by the Schreiber Research Group in partnership with JBCM Media Production and Dean Wetherell. Support for this project was provided by the Pew Charitable Trusts. The views expressed herein are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Pew Charitable Trusts. It has been reviewed by Denver Health Center for Addiction Medicine, County Sheriffs of Colorado, the Colorado Consortium for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention, and the Behavioral Health Administration's Jail-Based Behavioral Health Services. For access to the guidebook or questions, please contact Terry at tsrg.org. Thank you for your time.